All right, we are live and welcome back for another weekly show here. We're excited today. We got a show that I think is going to be extremely impactful for a lot of our viewers today. It's going to be the top 3 traits all successful agents have. And if you've been in the real estate game for a while, this is going to be a refresher course on some of the basics that are going to really propel your career and help you scale your business. And if you're brand new, this is the blueprint. This is what the successful agents are doing to have meaningful careers and really just thrive in this space. And as long as I've been around this business, I haven't seen any top agent not embrace these 3 traits we're going to go over today. So really excited to share that with you and get AJ's take on it. I'm John Mikish. I'm accompanied by AJ Maida. And before I dive into the content today, what I'd really like to do is just see, AJ, what have you been up to, man? What's been going on in your world the last week?
Yeah, so this past week we had some family in town from Michigan, and I live in beautiful Puerto Rico, Dorado Beach, and so it's nice for them to get out of Michigan while it's still warming up for summer there and enjoy some time with us. The thing that I did that was most exciting was Efoiling this past week. If you guys don't know what Efoiling is, check it out. But it's essentially a surfboard, like a mast, and then the surfboard's on top, and there's a wing. So it's like you're flying across the water, and there's an electric motor. These things go up to 30 miles an hour. You can surf waves. They are absolutely a blast. So I bought one of those not too long ago and finally got it out. And gosh, myself and my friend Zach, who was here, we probably got out 4 times, and I'm up flying across the water now. Saw some sea turtles, saw a spotted eagle ray, which was really cool, and just having a lot of fun with it. So a new hobby, a new passion.
What does one of those things weigh?
So the one I have with the larger battery, which is the one I have, it's about 70 pounds. So carrying it to the water is a little awkward, but it's not bad at all. And once you're in the water, you're weightless. It's really cool. Like you can even get in a wave. So imagine like a swell coming in that would form into a wave. You can get into the waves and into that swell and just let go of the trigger, which powers it, and actually surf the wave. And when the wave's done, you just hit the trigger again, power out of it, and go catch another one. It's awesome. It's a lot of fun, and I'm looking to get good at it so I can surf the waves. Right now, I'm just cruising flat water, enjoying nature with a little bit of adrenaline when you do a little fast turn and things like that. But I mean, you're 2 to 3 feet above the water on a very skinny mast, just cruising. It's really cool. So when you come down and visit, I'll definitely get you out there. They're pretty easy to learn. It takes about, I'd say, an hour, and then you're up and foiling, and then it's just getting better from there.
I've seen them before and always been interested in them. They look super fun. It's kind of impressive that it only weighs that much and can power you to go that fast. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, the technology is amazing, and the manufacturer is called Lift. That's the brand. There's a few different brands now, but they manufacture them about an hour and a half from where I live, and these things are like $12,000. So they're pretty much the cost of a jet ski. I mean, my first jet ski I bought used was $3,500, and these things brand new are $12,000. So they're not cheap, but they're worth it. It's a lot of fun. Yeah,
that's cool. This past weekend I got invited to join we did a charity tournament here in Bozeman, and it was for Young Life, and it was a clay shoot tournament. And
nice.
I haven't shot clays in probably over 20 years. I had a buddy that was a clay shoot instructor down at St. Simon's Island on the Cloister, at the Cloister Resort. And that was the last time I did it. It was over 20 years ago. So I wasn't know what to expect, but I knew it was going to be a win for me because it was a good excuse for me to go out and buy a new gun, which is always fun. So I got myself a brand new shotgun and went out there, and wasn't sure what was going to happen. I was a little intimidated. I was part of a team of 6, and we were competing for all the prizes and all the glory, and stepped up to my first set of 4 clays and got all 4 of them. So It was off to the races from there. Tons of fun.
That'd be awesome. That's something that we'll have to do when I come visit you in Montana.
100%. I said, next time my buddies are coming to town, we're doing this, because the place we went was way back in the country, and you were in the mountains, and there was 16 different stations, and each station had its own motorized like remote control for the machine that shoots the clays. and each station had a different like path that they would take and group, and it was just super fun, man. I was actually surprised by how much fun it was, and our whole team dressed up in Cowboys outfits, so that was kind of hilarious too. But
That's cool.
but anyway, let's dive into this today, man. I really am excited about this call today. Just kind of being in this space and the landscape, what it is right now. I think this is going to serve a lot of people. So the first trait that I see in all successful agents that they have is that they follow a daily schedule. So I want to unpack that a little bit. AJ, what are your initial thoughts on following a daily schedule?
Yeah, one of the things I learned early on in my career is if it's not in your schedule, it doesn't exist. Simply meaning if you don't time block the key income producing activities, it's probably not going to happen. So it's like if you plan out your whole week ahead of time and the key elements are in there of what makes you successful, it's going to be a win for you. And if they're not in there, well, it's probably not going to happen. So it's time blocking, really, maybe things with your kids, your spouse, all your personal stuff first, working out, your hobbies. So get all that in the calendar. But then between, your working hours, say you work from 8 to 4, 8 to 5, or 9 to 6, whatever it might be, really taking a look at your day and being very efficient with your time. And then the one thing that I want people to remember too, when it comes to really having a schedule, if you erase something, you have to replace it later in the week. I know a lot of times agents get busy and they find any excuse possible, maybe to skip prospecting, lead generation. So they skip it. So they're erasing it, whether or not they actually erased it or not, they missed it. So if that happens, especially for income producing activities, you got to replace it. You got to put it back in your calendar somewhere else, or you just start getting behind on your goal. I found that to be crucial. And yeah, you just kind of you stop wasting a lot of time when you follow your schedule. I know you and I, John, we're firm believers in, freedom comes from having discipline to follow a schedule, from following your calendar. And I think a lot of agents miss that. So it's essential, man. I think that's where agents should start. They got to get with their mentor coach and figure out, hey, what does a productive week look like? And then time block that, schedule it out every week.
Yeah, I had a mentor I worked with, and he used to have me color code my schedule.
Yeah.
And he'd be like, all right, there's green time, there's personal time, and we allocated blue to that. And then he said, so there's green time, which is money making time, personal time. And then there was just like red, which was like things that had to happen that were necessary, but not necessarily income producing activities. And we used to like, it would be interesting to see the colors on there. And, when you had that green time, it was like, hey, if you want to be effective, you need to start treating these income producing times, these income producing activities, prospecting, lead gen, you need to treat those like an appointment. Because if you were on a listing appointment, you wouldn't like stop to do your laundry or check your email in the middle of it. And yet that's what so many agents do when it comes to prospecting. One thing that I've always done is try to take what are the things that are going to move the needle the most, and try to schedule those things first. So once I have my schedule and I've sort of gotten my personal boundaries in there, my personal time, and I'm like, this is what I'm working with. This is what I'm creating and providing for my family with. What are the critical activities that have to happen? You alluded to it with the lead generation and the prospecting. And what I think is always interesting is if I'm coaching an agent and I look at what they're actually doing, I find that they typically like conceptually understand what I'm saying right now, but they do the opposite. So right. They let their prospecting times come, whenever they might happen or fit in. And as a result, they don't. AJ, did you schedule your prospecting time first, or how did you do that?
Yeah, it was pretty simple for me. Like you said, most important thing should be in your schedule first. And then I think most important thing should be not only put in your schedule first, but also happen first. That way you can't miss it. It's so easy to say, well, I'm going to prospect from 4 to 6 every day. And then your day gets out of hand, things come up, you got to pick up your kid from school because he or she got sick. You got a closing that got rescheduled or pushed back. So you got to go to that at 4 o'clock, or so many things can happen. Your day just gets out of control, and then you miss the prospecting session and you never replace it. So to avoid that from happening, I recommend, and this is exactly what I did, is every day from 8 to 11, I was on the phone prospecting and doing lead follow-up. It was that simple, and I never let anything get into that time block. And what you said, John, with that color exercise, because I did the same thing with my calendar at one point. Like, let's say the red stuff is the stuff that has to happen, but it's not necessarily income producing. Those are also the things that you can delegate. So it's really cool when you see, all right, you got your personal time in blue, money making in green. You want as much money making green time as possible in your work time, and as little red as possible. And then you can start to see, well, hey, if I did hire an assistant, what would they do? Well, they would start taking the red tasks off, and that would allow you to have more green time. That's going to be negotiating contracts, lead generation, going on appointments. That's it. So that exercise is so powerful. So if you feel like, maybe you got too much on your plate right now, or you're really not spending enough time on generating new business, this is a great exercise for anyone to do to start to figure that out. I mean, you can hire a virtual assistant, whatever, to take that off your plate.
Yeah, it's so good, man. Like, I actually didn't do it that way, but a lot of top agents that I know, they have that coveted 8 to 11 morning time block. And I know they're serious because maybe it's somebody that's in my world or in my organization, and I'll reach out to them in the morning and I get a reply back, hey, can I call you after 11? And it's like, they're doing their prospecting time, and knows that how they're winning it. I actually didn't do it that way. I really didn't like prospecting, as most agents probably don't, but I knew it was a necessary thing in order to hit my goals. So my mentality going into it was, how do I minimize the amount of hours that I prospect, but maximize my results? So what I personally did is, I don't even know how I came in touch with the MIT lead response study, but early on in my career, that got drilled into me. And it was such a profound thing because it gave me the confidence to know, okay, this is when I'm going to put my time in, and this is when I'm going to get the best results. So for me, that was Wednesdays and Thursdays, and it was 8 to 9 a.m. in the morning, and then 4 to 6 a.m. at night. Now, sometimes I'd have showings in the afternoon, but I could still get the 4 to 5 block in at night. And a lot of times I'd have showings scheduled and they'd cancel, and I'd just replace it with more green time. So if you're not where you want to be and you want to get further faster, just increase the amount of time that you're prospecting and lead generating, and voila, that's what's going to happen. Yeah. That was kind of the way I did it. Let me ask you though, what about morning routines? We hear a lot about morning routines. Do you believe in morning routines? Do you have one? Like, did you have one as an agent? Like, what do you say about that?
Yeah, as an agent, I did. My whole thing, and if you guys have followed me for any amount of time on social media or YouTube, I'm all about freedom. And freedom to me is not having a very strict routine, even though we're talking about following your schedule right now. For me, like, you didn't really like prospecting, I didn't really like prospecting, but it was a means to an end. It was a necessary evil. And that's how I feel about like strict routines. I'm just more of a free spirit. So when I was like in my grind phase, I'll refer to it as my grind phase, like, hey, I need to just get 4 transactions a month happening type of mindset from zero. I had a very strict morning routine and a very strict calendar. To today in my life, now that I'm financially independent, it's not so much strict, and I really enjoy that. And now that I'm a dad of 2 little kids, like, I remember thinking like, man, why don't all these agents have a strict morning routine? And now that I have kids, I realize like, okay, I see why having a strong morning routine might be tough if you have kids, although it's still possible. So yeah, man, when I was early on in my real estate career, there's this really, really cool workout group. You might have heard of it since we were both from Charlotte, called F3. It was this morning workout group, Faith Family Fitness, and it was at 5:30 outdoors, just men before they went to work, working out outside, rain, snow, whatever, didn't matter. And that was awesome for me. So I'd get up at 4:50. I would eat a banana, and I would be on like a field at a school or neighborhood by 5:30 to work out for an hour. And that was awesome. I'd go home, I would shower, typically read or listen to something while I was getting ready to just, get my mindset right. And then on my way to the office, I would either be listening to something to help my mindset again, or I'd be role playing my scripts. Ideally, I got to the office by 7:45 to role play my scripts, but if I was running behind for whatever reason, I would role play my scripts in the car on the way there. And by 8 a.m., I was hitting go on my dialer to start calling the new expireds. So it was workout, it was mindset, and it was, getting usually like a healthy shake or breakfast in before the office. So it's crucial, man. It's when you're operating at that level and you need that discipline in your life to achieve those types of goals. I think it's essential.
I'd leave my house. I lived way down on the peninsula, so I had a little bit of a drive. I'd go to the Y. I'd listen to a ritual podcast on my way to the Y. I'd listen to a podcast while I was working out. I'd end my workout with a run, which I felt like really increased my energy going through like the rest of the day. I'd hit up the juice bar. I'd make it to my office by 8, and that was my routine. And I always felt like whenever that didn't happen for whatever reason, my day wasn't as good or wasn't as productive. And it might have just been a mental block, but I feel like those morning routines are really critical. And the second part of that word routine, like actually having a routine that pre-frames you for success. So I don't think it's as important what it is. I just think it's that you have something that consistently gets you into movement. Movement's critical. Before you sit down at your desk and before you start making calls to get your energy up, to get your oxygen flowing, and then get right into it, man. And it's awesome. Last thing on this topic before we move on to the next one. What about calendar types? There's all types of calendars out there. There's different planners. There's just sheets of paper. There's, electronic versions. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I always liked paper calendars. I got away from it for a little while in the last couple of years just because I'm not so scheduled anymore. However, I was like, you know what, I could use a little more discipline in my life to get to that next financial level. So I brought the paper calendar back. I got one from Amazon. It was like $6. And every 15 minutes from like 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. is you have a line. So you can really time block effectively every 15 minutes. And I love that style. It's 8.5 by 11. I still have my Google Calendar just because so many things happen where people send a calendar invite that you accept and things like that now. And it's nice to have recurring things like this show is a recurring thing on my calendar. But, I just find when I can actually put pen to paper on my calendar and plan out my week. Like I was actually just doing this yesterday morning. I went back to, because I just bought this like a month ago. So I got, January through like April just blank. So I went back to April and I was actually just sketching out like what I want my ideal week to look like now. So I'm putting back a little more structure to my weeks, but yeah, I think it's, it doesn't have to be paper. I think for most people, though, it should be paper. I think they'd just be more effective with it. And especially when you're prospecting and you got your calendar book open right there on your desk and you know what appointment times you have available and you see right there your different time blocks, what you got to do. And it's just always right in front of you. And it's a tangible thing that you're carrying with you. So that's what I prefer.
And I think that most people, their knee-jerk response to this is like, oh, electronic, there's so much good technology out there. But I too found it to be more effective to have a written daily, weekly view planner. Yeah. And that's how I would block out my time and my colors. And I would have my red time there, which was like my showing time. And I would have those blocks pre-framed in there to make sure that personal stuff didn't like creep in and start robbing me of that time. And then what I could do is when I was prospecting, I could just have those open spots look, and I could be like, one of the things, you might close out a prospecting call with, what's a good time for you, Thursday at 5 or Friday at noon. And you could just go to those blocks right there and fill them in and have that at your fingertips. So that's what worked best for me. I'm always one that's a proponent of, success through things you've actually done, not through theory. And for me, that just worked better. I had my CRM, so I had like my electronic version of tasks and things like that, but it's generally like, what am I going to do and how am I going to flow through this week? Always worked best for me on paper.
Yep. I'm with you there.
The second top trait that I want to highlight, and you'll see that these kind of go in a sequential order, if you will. Number one, follow your daily schedule. But number two is lead generation daily. So, when it comes to lead generation, a critical aspect of any realtor's business plan, what do you say to that, AJ? What's that look like and mean to you?
Yeah, it's crucial. If you don't lead generate daily as consistent as possible, you're probably going to fail as an agent. And we know I think it's like 90% of all new agents fail in the first 3 years. And it's not because real estate's so hard. It's really not. It's because they don't have good habits and really good habits around income producing activities with lead generation being the most or the highest paid income producing activity that you can do as a real estate agent. So I think it's essential, and we live and die by that mindset. I remember my first real estate coach, and now I kind of cringe at the mindset because it gives me a little bit of anxiety to like think about living that way for 30 years, or that there are agents still living by this philosophy 20 years into their career. But it was start every day at zero. I think that mindset serves you for a time, but I think there's also got to be a time where you're like, man, I put in the work and now I have the freedom to not start every day at zero. Like, I am thankful today that if I never worked again, I could still live my current lifestyle forever. Like, that is a good feeling. Like, I start at 100% every day. So if you're newer or you're trying to get your sales to a new level, that's a great mindset to have. So if you're starting every day at zero, you're embracing that lifestyle like I did for a few years. It's, if you don't lead generate that day, you haven't really done anything to move the needle in your business, to move the ball forward. So when you start every day at zero, it's, you're going to lead generate for 2 to 4 hours, because you literally have zero clients when you have that mindset. Sure, you might have 10 listings, might have 4 under contract, 3 more buyers under contract. So you got deals in the pipeline. But when you're like, it's zero, I'm at zero today, unless I get a new listing appointment, a new buyer appointment. It's a great mindset to have when your back's against the wall. But man, 30 years in, that's for me, not the way I would choose to live. However, there's some top real estate coaches that still preach that day in, day out. But I'm like, let's get you to the thrive phase. Let's get you to financial independence, so you don't have to be on that hamster wheel. So
yeah, I think it makes me think like the difference between being busy and being effective.
Yeah.
A lot of agents are busy prospecting, but it's like, really, I think there's enough proven models out there where if you'll truly treat it like a profession and you'll dedicate yourself to the minimum required time necessary, I think there's a 5-year journey that we all have to go through if we're going to have a successful real estate career. And I don't think it has to be much longer than that, unless you're just really bad at it. And that's okay too, because we're all bad before we're good. But I think some people have some natural abilities and they might get there a little bit quicker. But it's basically 5 years of pain, but in a lifetime of reward. So like, I think back to those days early on when I was time blocking and prospecting. I don't wish to be back there, but I think about it fondly with gratitude and appreciation, because everything else that happened in my career was a result of that prospecting time. Yeah. So, one of the things that you can do is, figure out what your goals are. For me, it was always like, get around people who've done what I've done, make sure that my plan syncs up with their knowledge. Like, do they think this is realistic? And then reverse engineer it. So if I want to make, $250,000 in real estate, how many transactions is that in my market? Based on the lead sources I'm going after, what's an acceptable or realistic conversion rate? And then that's going to dictate how many hours of prospecting I need to do to get from where I am to that goal. And that'll make it really easy. I think, I always tell agents, like, if you'll give me a little bit of dedicated time, I can turn that into something very amazing. And it's usually a lot less than what you might have been working at a job before. I find that for 99% of the agents and their goals, 10 hours or less of dedicated prospecting time is all they'll need to do to hit their goals, and way more in most cases. And it's like, man, if you can't give me 10 hours a week of dedication right now, what are you doing? Mm-hmm. Because messing with your website online isn't really going to get you there. Yeah. So lead gen daily is important. We got to set the time aside. What lead sources were you primarily working, AJ, when you were, coming up and scheduling your prospecting time?
Yeah, when I didn't know what I didn't know, it was trying to dabble in everything. It was internet buyer leads, it was open houses, it was expireds, FSBO, circle prospecting, it was pay-per-click leads, Zillow, Realtor.com. So it was just throwing spaghetti at the wall, seeing what would stick. And once I hired a coach, I learned you got to have a laser focus for a period of time. And I went all in on expireds, for sale by owners, and crushed it. Sold 36 houses in my first full year as a real estate agent. And from there, just started to build a team. So I started to buy the internet leads, learn about pay-per-click advertising, hired a firm to manage that for me, invested in internet leads like Zillow and Realtor.com. Realtor.com never really worked for us, but Zillow was really good. Developed an open house strategy through what I was learning from top coaches. The mega open house strategy, we did really well with those. We get 40 to 50 buyers through a home on a weekend. So that was pretty much it. So it went from, getting really good as an individual agent with listing lead generation through expired FSBOs to building a team. Yeah, I keep the team fed. That is usually going to come from buyer leads. And then also training my agents to get really good at holding open houses on our listings.
Nice. Yeah, very similar. I think from a source category, I was a co-founder of Commissions Inc. So I had them in my market, and I was doing pay-per-click lead gen for buyer leads, mainly running like distress type of ads. I worked with a bank out of DC and was doing a lot of BPOs and a lot of foreclosures. And then we do the mega open houses when we list those because they were very attractive in the market, and went super deep on expireds, not so much FSBOs, just expireds. But it was like those were the three main pillars of my business for lead gen for a number of years, and allowed me to grow a top team with Remax and achieve a lot of goals with just those three lead sources. So really, I mean, we're talking about daily follow-up, having a schedule, lead gen. And then the third thing is it really brings these two together is, when you think about, okay, top agents that year after year after year are consistent and hitting their goals, I'm less interested in the agent that has a really good year and then you never hear from them again. But it's like, when I look to evidence of success, I want to find who are the agents in the marketplace that have stood the test of time, that have been in the up market, the down market, but they continue to thrive no matter what. And this last trait, I think, is evident in those people. Maybe not so much the flash in the pans, the ones that seem like overnight successes that are here today and gone tomorrow, but the ones that stand the test of time have this third trait, and that is they have ridiculous lead follow-up traits. So talk to me about lead follow-up. How do you pursue it? Like, what does it mean to you? What did you do to really exemplify lead follow-up?
Yeah, everyone should write down in their written calendar, fortune is in the follow-up. Put that on your bathroom mirror. Like you said, some agents can get really good at lead generation and they're getting some quick deals, but it's like they can burn out quick on that. They have a great year because the way the market was, or maybe they got a certain lead source that wasn't too saturated in their market, then it got saturated and they're like, what do I do? And they just like kind of fall away. It's those that develop, the first two traits we talked about, but the third one that ties them all in for a long lasting, successful career is lead follow-up. And it's being relentless with it. It's, really following up with the person until they either buy with you, sell with you, or they die. It's like, it's that mentality. Like, this is the long game. If I'm going to be a real estate agent for 30 years, I'm going to follow up with this person for 30 years until they do business with me. Now, of course, if they say, stop calling me, stop calling them type of deal. You don't want to be aggressive. You don't want to come off slimy. We're not talking about that. We're not talking about, being like, if you're a used car salesman, good for you. Good job hustling. Check out real estate because it's a much better career financially. But, the persona that used cars salesmen have, don't be that. So it's just really staying in touch on a consistent basis and trying to always be thinking, how can I add value? And when you do it right, it really should be only 3 to 5 years of having to grind away on your real estate business. And then in that period of time, you do have this pipeline that's mature, that's built out, that really kind of takes care of itself after a period of time. Now you still gotta, water those leads and nurture them so they can, flourish, and then you can eventually reap it. But man, after probably 2 years of consistent prospecting, I got to the point where I had a couple thousand sellers in my database that I had talked to previously. And they said, sure, when we go to sell the home, we're open to interviewing you. We're not obligated to another agent. I got to that through a script that I would use, and they would go in my nurture database. I'd put them up on my VIP system, and it was a systematic way to follow up with them. mostly phone calls. So I was mostly just still calling via phone to convert them, but it would be some text messages, some emails, and then some direct mail. So they were seeing from me on a consistent basis. I mean, if you get to the point where you got a couple thousand sellers in your database that were expired or for sale by owner or whatever, and they start to know you, remember you, they're probably going to list with you when they're ready. It's like, if you've been following up with someone for 2 years and when you call, they're like, oh, hey, what's up, AJ? Yeah, not ready to sell yet. Okay, cool. Hang up. And you were that diligent with your follow-up. Why would they go to Google and try to find an agent that they have no relationship with, no contact with? They're going to do what's easiest, and that's going to be to list with the person that's been following up with them long term. So, and it's fun. Like I didn't love prospecting until I got to that point where I was essentially prospecting my database, which was just expired leads that I was nurturing. And then it became easy.
Yeah, it was interesting. Like, I did an expired campaign for a lot of years, 7 years, I think, where I was diligently prospecting expireds, and the vast majority, over 75% of the expired listings that I listed and sold were usually people that we were following up with for 12 plus months. So that initial call that morning it expires, that's low hanging fruit, and it's like a race to that fruit. But I found the majority of my business was the consistent follow up for people that decided, hey, they weren't going to sell again. They tried it. They were going to come back on the market down the road, and we stayed in touch with them until they were ready to do that. I'm going to take a little bit of a different take on this. I agree with everything you said, and definitely did a lot of that myself. But you said something earlier about, the agent that grinds away for 30 years. And we probably all know an agent like that. And we probably don't look to that agent that we're thinking about in our head as like, that's what I want to be. That's who I want to be. And I said earlier, you don't have to be. Like there's proven paths. There's models where if you grind for 5 years, you do your prospecting, you're diligent, you treat it like a business, you can build a career. And the reason that is because if you prospect this way and you're starting today from zero, or you're restarting today and you haven't done any of these things right, you can put the time in to prospect to get the business. But once you get the business and do the deal, you now have a client. And while you're building your lead database, you're also building a client database. And if the follow-up is right with those clients, you're going to get, repeat business from them. You're going to get referrals from them. And I think that's an area. One of the things they say in business is sometimes your initial success keeps you from your ultimate success. And where I bring that into this, equation is you may be really successful at prospecting for leads. And that's your initial success. And that's awesome. And that's great. But don't let that rob you of your ultimate success, which is continuing to do those things that you're good at to generate business, but also nurturing a client database and getting that repeat referral business, which is a much easier lift. It's a much higher conversion rate. And when I think about some of the really greats that I know out there, the 60% of their annual business is from their client database. And it doesn't have to be huge, guys. It could be 1,000 people or less. I had a guy that taught a 500 person database or less. And if you get more than that, you have to replace somebody from that. So you work that client database and you give real value. When I think of the word follow-up, I immediately think of a pet peeve of mine, which is just checking in. Don't ever be a just checker inner. It's the worst thing to be. Nobody wants to be just checked in on. There's no value transfer. You want to be calling people with value. So if you feel like you've been prospecting and you have this database, whether it's leads or past clients, but you're not getting anything out of them or you're not moving them forward, think about what it is you're calling to follow up with. What value do you have? I'm getting ready to shoot a video on, when we go on a listing appointment and, when we don't walk away from the listing in that moment, what are we doing to follow up with the listing in the hours and days thereafter to get that listing? Because a lot of people don't list in the initial appointment. And if you're not doing things that are following up that are value driven, what are you doing? So I think you had said, be value adding all the time. To me, that's a critical component of following up with people.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to add on that topic?
No, I was just laughing about, no one wants to be just checked in on. It's so
I really
true. It's
like
like,
it.
if you ever
Um,
get that call, it's like, man, like, why are you even calling me and wasting my time? And then you stop answering that person's calls because like you don't want me just checked in on. But at the same time, you do got to like ask for the appointment. I find a lot of times when people are prospecting, lead generating, they're doing a great job making the contacts, but they never like ask for the appointment. So when you are calling and doing follow up, you do want to think, how can I add value? But you also got to have an ask in there. It's like, what I got this from you initially, John, seeing you as an example in our market and also Lars, but the idea of like these client appreciation parties, it's like, why not take your expired leads that you're nurturing or any lead that you're nurturing and just invite them to your client appreciation parties? It's like such a great way to add value. So you can call and say, hey, just want to give you a call. We're having our spring client appreciation party at the local minor league baseball field, whatever. Want to invite you because I know you're not past client yet, but hopefully when you are ready to sell, we do business together. So I want to invite you down to the ball game, let them respond, whatever. And then, hey, just out of curiosity, do you know anyone looking to buy or sell? My business is largely based on referrals or something like that. So you have some kind of ask and you don't just become a professional conversationalist. So I think that's a key component to all this. Make sure that you're always asking for the appointment in the right way.
Yeah, client event parties were huge for us. So just to kind of recap these three traits is number one, follow a daily schedule. Number two, lead generate daily. And number three, they have ridiculous follow-up. And I promise you, if you're really assessing like where you are as a scale of 1 to 10 on these three categories, if your business is not where it needs to be, it's because you're scoring low in one or more of these areas. And it's an immediate fix that you can put into practice today. Get yourself a schedule. AJ and I recommend on paper, time block the critical activities and then do them. It's not rocket science, guys. That's one of the things I love about this industry is that, people can have an amazing life-changing success and a rewarding career here, and they don't need a doctorate degree from Harvard. It's just not that complicated, but we got to be willing to do the work. AJ, when you think about these three traits, are there any books maybe that you would recommend that might come to mind that would help somebody in one of these three areas or all of these three areas?
Yeah, a couple books come to mind, and I was thinking too as you were talking that as you just did the recap of the three traits. In my mind, the first thing that I thought of was it's so simple. People are going to dismiss these three things. Well, it's like, oh, well, I already know that. That's like the one of the most dangerous things you can think or say is I already know that. And these are very simple traits. And we always say success is simple, just not easy. It does take hard work. It's just that simple. I love what you said. Rate on a scale of 1 to 10 how you're doing in each one, and just work on those three. Quarterly review. How are you doing on each trait? Review it, improve it. If you just do that, rinse and repeat, you'll be well on your way to financial freedom, financial independence. So the books that came to mind, the first one's a really old school one. I love it. It's inspiring to me. It's called, I think the exact title is How I Raised Myself from Failure to Success with Selling. It's something like that. How I Raised Myself from Failure to Success in Selling. Something like that. The cover is like black with, I think, orange or red lettering. This book was written in like the 20s or 30s. Are you familiar with that one, John?
Oh, I actually wrote it down. I rarely is a book mentioned that I haven't heard of, so I wrote that one down.
Yeah, this one's old school. This one, I mean, the guy, it's been years since I read it, but it's like the 20s and 30s. This guy who basically changed his life through selling. So a really cool book.
What's so cool about the old school though is that like there is nothing new, guys.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing out there brand new that you're going to learn that nobody else knows that's going to be your direct path to success.
Yeah.
There might be something new that you bolt on, but it's bolted onto these principles, these traits that we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, man.
Yeah, and then another one that I'd always have my team read would be Success Principles, Jack Canfield. I love that book. He's one of the co-authors of Chicken Soup for the Soul. If you've never read one of those books, they're just really easy to read. inspiring, motivating. And the way he chops up all the success principles, I think there's like 78. It's a really large book, but each success principle is only a handful of pages, so it's easy to consume. More than anything, I want to recommend some books that are more just going to help your mindset, help you actually take action, because what we covered here today is really as simple as it is. It's just, are you going to take the action that's required to achieve the success that you're looking for based on these 3 traits? And if you don't have the right mindset, you're not going to achieve it. And I'll just give one third book, and this is one that I think is recommended a lot, but I got to recommend it again. Fanatical Prospecting, and we're actually doing an event in San Antonio this July where the author of that book will be there as a guest speaker. So if you guys want to check out that conference, let us know. There's a link in the description. You can sign up to talk to one of us, and we'll make sure that you get a ticket to that event on us. But Fanatical Prospecting, great book.
Jeb Blount is going to be there speaking. You're going to be speaking as well, so you'll be backstage with him, which will be awesome. Yeah. That's a great book. I mean, I make everybody that works, at my real estate companies read that book. Fanatical Prospecting is like a staple, and for those that maybe struggle with prospecting, I think what that book will give you is an understanding of the level of intensity and intention that you need around prospecting. So it really helps people kind of gain that if they don't have one of those already as a basis. And then I also like it, maybe if you're not a reader or you struggle with reading and, it's not something you do a lot. I like Miracle Morning too by Hal Elrod, because it's written in a fable format. It's very easy to read, but I think it'll get your mind right about, what is success going to look like for you, and how do you start your morning in order to set yourself up for success, which I think is very important.
Yeah, that's good.
Awesome, man.
Cool. I confirmed it is How I Raised Myself from Failure to Success in Selling. It's by Frank Becker, and it's a yellow cover with red font. And
awesome, man. I'll check that out for sure.
Yeah.
Well, it's been another great week. We've been running this show just the 2 of us without our buddy Lars Hedenborg, but he's having a phenomenal time here on his birthday trip, and we'll be catching up with him here in a couple of weeks when he gets back. Until then, if you need anything, reach out to us. We'll put a link in the description below. We're happy to help and serve in any way we can, and just enjoy bringing you this content on a weekly basis.